Hey guys, Jinx here, one of the Monster Hunter math guys. Now we do of course have the rest of the SNS meta videos coming out for you guys, but collaborations do take a little bit longer to produce than our regular style content. In the meantime, we have some juicy Iceborne leaks to talk about. In particular, we want to talk about the affinity changes because they do heavily change how we make builds, and in particular how the max might build completely guts the skill. Now, we aren't really a Monster Hunter World news channel. There are lots of other places you can go to find out about Iceborne changes as they come out. Channels like our friends Dark Hero and Rex, for example. But we find this one to be a particularly important one for us to cover because, well, we're the meta set guys, and these heavily change how optimal sets work in Iceborne. But before that, I do want to mention one quick thing. It has come to our attention that a lot of you don't know that we have a Twitter and that Tuna has a Twitch. Tuna and I are equal partners on this channel, and as we look to grow the channel so we can bring you more and more frequent content, we're going to be mentioning these at the beginning of each video to make sure that they don't go neglected. In fact, as soon as this video goes live, Tuna will be live on Twitch to answer any questions you might have about the video. So be sure to check them out. Following us on Twitter and Twitch is one of the best ways to support us for free. Thanks for your patience, on with the video. Now of course this is a pre-release leak, so there's no guarantee it's going to be like this when the game comes out, so grain of salt and all that. So the original source of these leaks is coming from this particular video. I don't speak Japanese, but link in the top right and the description if you want to see the original material. The translation as has been told to me for the actual channel is the Jump channel. If you like this kind of content and you do speak Japanese, then be sure to check them out, link in the top right and description. Now I don't speak Japanese, and the translations for these were created by various members of the community. Now, I tried doing some research into who to credit for that, but couldn't find anyone really specific, so thank you to everyone who did translate it, and if you'd like me to credit you in the description, leave a comment below. So, one of our set optimizers did pin this total list of all the translations on the Discord server. Again, I don't know if he was the first one to compile this, but I don't know who to credit. Now, these Iceborne changes are all very interesting, but in particular in this video, I want to focus on the affinity skill changes. All the other skill changes like elemental attack getting a 6th level, non-elemental boost getting nerfed are all neat, but they don't really change too much how we build. However, the changes to all of the different affinity skills make a huge impact on how we make our build choices. So here are all of the affinity skill changes. Weakness exploit is now only 10, 20, or 30% unless you clutch claw soften the monster, in which case it goes back to its original values. Crit eye level 7 is now 40% at max instead of 30%, and agitator is nerfed overall. And finally, max might has been absolutely gutted. So I'll talk about the first three first, and then finish with the max might changes because that is by far the longest conversation. So the weakness exploit changes frankly had to happen because weakness exploit was way too powerful and efficient of a skill. And I do think locking the 50% affinity behind having to clutch claw soften a monster part is a smart way to incentivize you using the clutch claw mechanics. Now, I don't think this will make too much of a difference in clean runs. In clean runs, you're generally focusing one monster part down anyway, so you'll effectively have the exact same affinity as long as you have softened that part beforehand. But this does make a significant difference for unclean runs where you don't always hit the same weak points. Essentially, this increases the skill cap for actually making best use of weakness exploit, which is not a bad thing. However, there is the issue that some weapons might not actually be able to keep up clutch claw softens. I am currently of the opinion that light weapons that take 2 hits to soften instead of 1 for heavy weapons are actually much better at softening than the heavy weapons. The issue with a lot of heavy weapons is that between clutch clawing onto the monster and then finishing your clutch claw soften attack, that's about 5 to 6 seconds. Lots of monsters don't give you a 5 to 6 second window for you to do that without getting hit. I mean, imagine trying to soften Behemoth's arm with a greatsword. He's not really going to give you windows to do that. Now, of course, if you have Rocksteady or Temporal Mantle on, that's not as much of an issue. But that does mean because those have limited time windows, you have to plan that to make sure you're always keeping the monster part softened. But yeah, weakness exploit changes I think are healthy. They may change how some builds work out though. Next up is crit eye maxes at 40%. This is nice, it makes up for some of the lost affinity in the other skills. Now, in current Monster Hunter world, crit eye is almost always better than attack boost anyway, but in Iceborne that's going to be even more so the case because of how much less affinity we get from other skills now. So expect crit eye 7 to just be standard in pretty much every meta build now. As for the Agitator nerfs, I haven't seen specific numbers, but Agitator was always a cherry on top skill anyway. It was pretty much just always added in as a little bit of extra damage because we have the skill efficiency left over for it. Now I understand why they do this because a Clutch Claw gives you access to instantly enraging a monster. Even then, Agitator is such a cherry on top skill, I didn't really see it necessary to make this change, but it's a healthy one I suppose. And now for the big one, Max Might. So I've heard different numbers for this, but basically Max Might now requires you to have your stamina full for a certain amount of seconds before it activates. The most common number I've heard is 7, but I've also heard some say 3 to 5. So let's talk about the 7-second one first. If it does in fact take 7 full seconds of full stamina to actually trigger Max Might is a completely dead skill. I say this with no hyperbole, I say this with no exaggeration, it is a dead skill. Really, the only situations you will be able to use Max Might is if you are doing a flinch lock strategy. And possibly non-spread light bowgun in multiplayer. It still probably won't work in solo. And maybe with Rocksteady and Temporal, but that's still a big maybe. Now I want you to do a thought experiment with me. Now think about your past 10 hunts. Out of your past 10 hunts, how many times could you actually tell me you have gone 7 seconds without rolling at least once? When has a monster allowed you to not have to roll an attack to get out of the way in 7 seconds? Realistically, the only time is one of those 3 situations I mentioned earlier. And please keep in mind, this is just for you to have it active. This isn't even considering uptime. If you want to have 50% Max Might uptime now, you have to not consume stamina, so no rolling, no foresight, no diving, none of that for 14 seconds at a time. When do you realistically actually not roll for 14 seconds when fighting a monster? Like, seriously. Now you may be thinking, well if it only works with Temporal Mantle, then I might as well just slot it into my Temporal Mantle slots, right? And that's fair, but that means that your regular build without the mantle decos in it are not going to have 100% affinity. Because mantles do have very long cooldowns and very short durations, in my opinion you'd be much better off running 100% affinity in all of your core skills in your primary build and then throwing little extra damage add-ons like more attack boost or peak performance or agitator into your actual mantles. And assuming master rank monsters hit us hard enough, not rolling with Rocksteady isn't going to be very realistic, so you still will probably roll more than once every 14 seconds. TLDR, if it is 7 seconds to benefit from Max Might, that makes it a pretty much useless skill outside of things like a spread heavy bowgun flinch lock or a CC chain Hame run. Like, unless a monster is not moving, you're not going to be able to use the skill well. Now if it's 5 seconds, this is still pretty much entirely the case. 10 seconds in order to get 50% uptime on this skill, in other words make it as efficient as Crit Eye is not very good. I mean, realistically again, how often do you not roll for 10 seconds at a time when fighting a monster? There's very few scenarios that actually applies. Now, if it's only 3 seconds, that is a lot more reasonable actually. Not having to roll every 6 seconds is something you can actually manage against monsters if you play well and position yourself properly. Again, this only makes it as efficient as Crit Eye, so you're still better off fitting Crit Eye into the build unless you already have that maxed. And even a 3-second window until activation makes it pretty much useless on certain weapons like Greatsword or Longsword because they are always using Foresight slashes and tackles, as well as Gun Lance and Charge Blade and SNS because blocking also takes stamina and those weapons also hop a lot. But Max Might will see some use in standard builds if it's only a 3-second limit because not having to dodge every 6 seconds is something more realistic. And would put Max Might into a relatively healthier spot because it wouldn't always be meta. Even then though, this is only assuming the matchup allows you to do so, turning Max Might into an extremely matchup dependent skill. And honestly, I don't know if I like that. Not only does that make them much more complicated for us to make builds because now we have to consider whether Max Might will apply or not or just decide to completely omit it from any meta builds. And even in the case where it is applicable, it'll be only applicable if you position and play extremely cleanly. In other words, it's the kind of thing you probably only ever really really see speedrunners use. Similar to things like using builds that only use 10 units of white, or using an attack augment instead of a health augment when you're using peak performance builds. Technically, if you play perfectly, you'll deal more damage, but it's not something we generally recommend. So yeah, the more I think about it, even a 3-second duration until activation will pretty much kill the skill. Now, I hope all of this is something Capcom is aware of and doing intentionally for max might, because the way things are looking right now, this skill is very much looking to be similar to Resentment and Latent Power. Both of these skills are basically useless except outside of 1 or 2 niche scenarios. Latent Power pretty much only works against Arc-Tempered Val and AT Lunastra, because the constant damage over times gives it decently high uptime. And even then, you would only really ever consider using them on dual blades. Other weapons don't really have a need to run Latent Power against those guys. And Resentment is only ever really going to be useful against Teostra or against Lunastra, again because the damage over times can give you constant red health. Ironically, Valhazak and Arc-Tempered Valhazak is actually not a good matchup for Resentment. That's because one of Val's natural damage over times actually kills your red health, meaning you almost never have red health uptime. Fun fact, don't run Resentment against Valhazak. But I really hope that with no hyperbole, no exaggeration, if Capcom implements these changes, it will completely kill Max Might. And if that is their intention, then cool, Max Might's a dead skill, but I hope they know that they are making it a dead skill with this change. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to cover in this video, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a like and share it with friends who might be interested in hearing about these changes. And we're interested in hearing your opinions on these changes, so leave a comment below letting us know what you think. And you know we're discussing these changes a lot on our Discord server, the Mathless Nest, so be sure to check it out if you'd like to come join the discussion. Don't forget we also have a Twitter where we post updates about videos and various things that interest us, and Tuna does stream on twitch.tv/TunaTaco. Be sure to come check him out if you'd like to come hunt or just chat. He will be live as soon as this video goes live in case you have any questions about the video or just want to chat with us. A huge thank you as always to Honey over at honeyhunterworld.com for creating and maintaining the tools we use to make all of our sets. And our content wouldn't be possible without the generosity of our patrons. So an especially huge thank you to MC Persona, Foray, Yoshi Cho, David Sternberg, XCLK07, Gilgi, Haika, Milky Powder, David Ju Sinclair, Kuritar, Warren Kios, Hensatsuken, Papa Slatch, Wed Manticore, Cap'n Big Brain, Zamir Washington, Brian Kianon, Bram Orsel, Anti-Spartan, Lightweight, The Local, PB Livingston, Flago Blast, Jordan Petit, Skylar Yang, Kong Kong, Checkleman, Lupin, Mongus, Kumiko, Triple Agent, Augusta Oliveira, Alan O'Dom, Baguette, Zimv, Sirkite, Billy Barthel, Wedgwood, Dandy, Cap'n Walmart, Magister Obscura, Jamie, and every single one of you who supports us on Patreon. You guys are the real heroes of the channel. Without you, we might have to resort to doing more clickbaity titles, doing less information-dense videos, and just kind of playing the YouTube algorithm game as best as we can. But y'all are a constant reminder that the kind of content you guys love are our very content-heavy, very dense, very well-researched videos. So thank you again for being a constant reminder that we shouldn't make clickbait thumbnails like this. Anyway, as always, you guys know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and I'll let you know when our new videos come out if you're interested. It's really up to you. Either way, we'll see you guys in the next one.